Welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name is Tom Levine. I'm Cornerstone's technical specialist and commission specialist. And today we're going to be talking about video conferences and online meetings. Now, I know a lot of us have been doing quite a few of those recently, just with everything that's been going on. But I figure it's a good time to sort of touch base and talk about a few different options for online meetings, as well as the etiquette going into them and things to look out for with when you're scheduling or if you're trying to get someone set up. So without further ado, let's get started with some housekeeping. First off, if you have a question, please type it in the questions box. I will be answering questions as I go through the presentation, but if I don't get to it right away, please don't worry, I will address your questions. It might just take me a minute. If I think that we're on kind of a separate topic and you ask a question, I'll probably loop back around to it at the end. Additionally, don't forget to reach out if you have any questions that you just don't feel comfortable asking during the presentation. My email address is tlevine@crnstone.com, and my phone number is 513-487-5390. Now, phone is probably one of the better ways to reach me, but if you do send me an email, don't forget to include Tech Tuesday somewhere in the subject line. It filters it out and makes it easier for me to see. Additionally, never miss a webinar. If you would like to review one of our older webinars, I know I tend to talk fast as I'm going through things, please feel free to visit our website at www.crnstone.com /webinar-series. All of our webinars are located on that resource, and I will be putting up a link to it here as well soon once we finish the presentation. And lastly, don't forget about our Refer an Agent program. Our Refer an Agent program is really if you just know another agent who you might want to get signed up with Cornerstone, go ahead and submit them as a referral to us through the Cornerstone website. We will then track and monitor them over the next 6 months if they get signed up. And once we verify that they write a case within the first 6 months, then you earn a $250 bonus. So I'd say that's pretty good. But let's go ahead and get into online meetings. So what are some of the benefits of online meetings? Why would you even want to do one? First is that you miss out on a lot by not having a physical conversation with a client. One of the main benefits of online meetings is you gain access to those things again. Things like nonverbal cues. If someone's slunched over or leaning into the screen, maybe you know they're a little more attentive versus if they're just sort of leaning back, looking off into space. You can get a feel for body language a lot more than you would without video. Additionally, you can connect better with clients because they can see your nonverbal cues as well. They can see, oh, you know, this person seems active. They seem very interested in what they're talking about. Maybe I should listen. It also improves your communication efficiency as a result, and you're able to communicate more effectively with your client, as well as giving you the ability to share visual aids. One of the things that online meetings allows you to do is actually what I'm doing for this webinar, which is streaming your screen. You can see this PowerPoint presentation I'm running because I'm sharing that PowerPoint presentation with you through this service. And a lot of the good video chat apps do the same. You can use this chat to maybe share like a form and kind of mimic what they're doing as they're filling it out. Or you can show a PDF to a client or a presentation like this all remotely, which makes it a pretty powerful tool. That said, it's not always the most suitable. There are a few things you might want to consider before setting up an online meeting. The first and foremost being your internet connection. You want to make sure that you have a connection with large enough bandwidth and high enough speed to make things work. You want the highest speed internet connection you can get with one-on-one meetings where they're not very bandwidth intensive, but if you won't be the only one connecting, you might want to make sure you have at least 600 kilobytes per second of internet speed, as well as a pretty good bandwidth for your internet connection. The other thing you think about is, or would need to think about, is what service you're going to use for the chat. We're going to get into this a little bit later in the presentation, but you might want to think, okay, which service am I using? Am I using Zoom? Am I using Webex? Am I using GoToMeeting? What service will best work for my client, and which one should I use? Also, once you know that, how familiar are you with the service you're going to be using? Do you understand how to mute yourself, how to display your video, maybe just how to share your screen in it? And if you aren't familiar with that, then you might want to learn how to do that before the meeting starts. Additionally, you might want to think about the hardware you're going to be using. Will you be using a tablet? Will you be using a 2-in-1? Or are you using a desktop like I'm using now? Just making sure that your hardware is good enough for what you're trying to do. Most web applications like this, or most things like GoToMeeting, these sorts of webinar calls can run on pretty much anything. So it's not really as big of a concern now as it used to be, but it will use a lot of your bandwidth. So make sure to close out as many other apps that are, connecting to the internet as you can before you get started. Additionally, where will you be for this meeting? Are you going to be in an area where it's okay to share your video? Or are you going to be maybe in your home and you don't want to share that? There's also an option in a lot of meeting places now to actually include a digital background. So even if you're, say, working at a Starbucks, they can sort of crop you out of the image and just show a fake background. So that's one of the other things you might want to consider doing if you're trying to avoid showing off the space around you. And lastly, how is your audio and microphone set up? And does that cause issues? I can't talk about how many meetings I've been in where suddenly I've heard like a screeching noise or a bunch of reverberation sounds from someone in the chat who's attending. And normally this is solved when they just mute their microphone. The reason that works is because most of the time they have like a voice kind of thing on, or like speakers going right next to the microphone they're also using to talk, and that can cause reverberations and really mess with people on the line. So you might also want to think about getting like a pair of earbuds or a headset that you can hook up as well to listen to what's going on in the webinar or the chat. That also leads us pretty easily into online etiquette. The first is knowing your system. Everyone's been in an online meeting where someone didn't really know how to mute themselves or didn't know, oh, I'm sharing my screen right now. And just knowing how to use the system in general can be a really good thing to do before a meeting. Also, you might want to make sure you have proper lighting if you're going to be sharing your video feed. You'll want to make sure that you look as good as you can. You also might want to consider your location and background, as I mentioned, and also that your equipment is fully functional just before the meeting, meaning just open up like a fake window, make sure your camera's working, test your audio, make sure it's picking things up, etc. And make sure you dress appropriate to your situation. Kind of the same sort of thing as lighting, just make sure you look professional if you're going to be talking about professional things. And lastly, promptness. I've been decent at that this year, but just making sure that you show up on time for your meetings and that you try not to go over your time budget or leave out anything important. So moving on. There are a few other things to consider before you do an online meeting, which is, should I even schedule one? A lot of people set up a lot of online meetings when there isn't really a need for it, and it could have been handled maybe a bit better way. The questions you should ask yourself before scheduling an online meeting kind of go in that order, top to bottom, for the list that I have on the screen right now. And if you answer no to any of these questions, you might want to consider a different option for other than an online meeting. First is, have I considered everything about a subject at hand? And that's pretty self-explanatory. You want to make sure that you've thought through what you're going to talk about and decide what you're going to do before you actually schedule the meeting. So make sure you fully flush out your ideas that you want to share. Then additionally, you might want to ask yourself, do I need someone else's opinion or decision to do this? A lot of times people will set up a meeting to talk to someone and just say, hey, I just need one piece of input. And that can sometimes mess with things. Additionally, you might need a real-time conversation to solve a problem. If you need like an answer instantly, or you need to talk to someone directly, then that's something that you might need an online meeting for. If you don't necessarily need their input right then, or if maybe you just don't need like a real-time interaction, maybe send an email or send an instant message, something else that isn't necessarily as time sensitive as an online meeting. Additionally, you might want to think about what you need to share to get your point across. Is it one file or is it more? If it's more files than one, then you might want to consider an email where everything can be kind of lumped together and talked about in length. You might also think, do we need to walk someone through anything to get this point across? Because then it might be more beneficial to have an online meeting as well. Additionally, you might think, well, I do need to share something, but it has some private health information. I don't know that I feel comfortable sharing that over an online meeting. And lastly, that kind of leads us into, can this be shared digitally? A lot of the services we're talking about are perfectly fine to share online health information through. But there are a few rules that you're going to need to consider, mainly with the service that you're going to be using before you set up any meetings. First, how does it integrate with other apps? Will my client be required to download any software for the meeting? Is it easy to use? And primarily, how will I be using it? What that essentially means is, does the app work well with, say, scheduling? Like if you schedule a meeting, do you have the option of linking it to Outlook and setting up a meeting reminder? Or do you have to send a link separately and set up your own invitation? Will your client be required to download any software to meet, or will they just be able to meet you through using a link and just having a window open in their browser? Is it easy for everyone to use, or is it widespread enough for use that most people kind of know how to work it? That just helps for your ease of use as well. And also, how primarily will you be using it? Are you going to be sharing private health information or not? If you are, then it needs to be over an encrypted service and not over a free one. So that gets us more into what services should you use. And there are three we're going to be fine options for working in healthcare. You just might need to think it through a little bit more than just using a free version. So first off, Zoom. It is a free service used by a lot of people, but the free one is not the version of it you would need. We'll get into that in a second. It doesn't typically lock down passwords, which is a bit of a problem. And it is an encrypted channel, but direct links into the chat work for anyone. So you might want to make sure it's password protected. We're also going to We're also going to talk a little bit about Webex, which is a free or paid option like Zoom. Meetings have passwords at all levels of service, and the free meeting recordings and virtual backgrounds are available with compatible hardware on that. And lastly, we have GoToMeeting. It's what we use here at Cornerstone to provide these webinars, and it's paid only, it's encrypted at all plan levels, and they actually advertise as being HIPAA compliant. But that's kind of the problem with any of these services, is technically they could all advertise as HIPAA compliant. What actually goes into that? First off, do all of these services meet the requirements? Legally speaking, the HIPAA privacy rule requires that all covered entities have a signed business associate agreement with any business associate they engage with that may come in contact with PHI. What that basically means is whoever you're doing business with that you're going to share information like that through, you need to make sure that they sign a business associate agreement with you. And as long as you're using a paid service, most of the time that's already covered. Just by having a contract and by showing that their service is fully locked down and encrypted end to end, any data that they're going to be storing, like recordings of the webinar that's sharing these things like private health information, just make sure that those are stored in an encrypted way and fully locked down, separate from other data, and that you have backups of that data. And you're good to use it. All of these services can meet these requirements. They just might meet them at different tiers. And that's kind of what I was getting into with Zoom. Before I get into this, I do see one question here, but it's more technical. Amanda, I did see your question about you seeing the presentation but not seeing my video. If anyone else has a similar problem, please go ahead and let me know. It could just be that you have that option clicked off, Amanda. There should be a little video icon somewhere on your screen. If you click that, you might be able to see my video as well. Anyway, Zoom. Zoom has a few different tiers to it, and I just kind of wanted to talk about those for a bit. First is their free basic tier. You can host up to 100 participants using Zoom. Group meetings are available for free for up to 40 minutes of conversation, and you have unlimited one-on-one meetings at a basic level. The problem is, at the basic level, I'm pretty sure you can't set up passwords, and that's a problem. All sorts of communications that you're trying to do with these sorts of apps, if you're sharing personal health information, they have to be encrypted and they have to be password locked. Most services do have a way to do that, and Zoom does too at every level aside from the free and basic level. Plus, if you are using these at the free level, you kind of end up messing things up there as well. So let's talk about their cheaper option, or their most valuable option to me, which is the Pro option. It's $149, which means access to 9 different lines of Zoom, so 9 separate accounts on that plan, and they amount to about $12.50 a month per line. You can host up to 100 participants. You can increase the participants up to 1,000 with large meetings add-on. And group meetings, you can hold them for up to 30 hours. It also has social media streaming. So what that means is you can connect it into things like Facebook or other sort of advertising options. And you can also get about 1 gigabyte of cloud recording space per license. That's not a lot, but it's enough to record maybe 1 or 2 meetings. And lastly, you gain access to their it's pretty Outlook and sends emails to all the participants in your meetings, which I think is a pretty good offer. They do have some other tier options that are a little bit higher end, but this is what I'd recommend for a medium-sized business on Zoom. This is actually what the screen will look like if you are doing a Zoom presentation as well. This is kind of a bigger screen. Give me one moment to rearrange some of my tools here for the webinar, but I'm just going to sort of pen through some of these options so you get an idea of how you would interact with this service. You can call in directly. What that means is you can use your phone for audio, or you can use your computer for audio. Either way, if you are part of the Zoom call, you can use these icons right here to change your microphone and video. And I'm actually going to change the color on that I had, so it's a little easier to see. But you can do that right here with these options. You can mute your microphone over here, or you can turn on and off your video if you're connected with a webcam or using like your phone camera here. Additionally, you can invite additional people to your meeting using the invite button. You can also remove people by clicking on the manage participants option, clicking on their name and just hitting kick or remove from chat. You can also open up direct messaging options with your attendees by using the chat button here. And you can record part of what you're displaying with the record button. When it comes to sharing, however, it's a little easier to just show you what the sharing screen is. And that's that green icon in the middle that I haven't circled. Give me one moment to advance the slide. Here we are. In order to share with Zoom, it's pretty direct. All you do is hit the share button, and then this menu will pop up. This menu sort of shows a bunch of different apps running on the device that I was using to create this display, as well as the desktop, screen 1 and screen 2. By using the screen options, you're able to see which screen you're actually going to be showing, and then it'll show a clean version of that. What that means is it won't show the active apps that you have running, but it will show whatever else you put up on that screen. So it's pretty useful. Next, we have Webex, which is actually the option that I like to recommend the most. It has a few different plans that I think might be helpful, but it's a little weird, so you might want to sort through it a bit. First, there's the free user, which still has the same problems as the Zoom free user option that I mentioned before. But you get a meeting length of up to 50 minutes. You can have up to 100 participants at one time, but that only supports their online version, which is their Webex sort of browser window app. Additionally, it has local storage of your meetings, as well as it actually costs people to dial in using phone services. So like if they were using their phone as a microphone, or they're just dialing into the call, then it's actually going to cost them to do that. But additionally, they have 2 separate plans after that. Webex is a little bit different than Zoom because Webex also does phone over internet plans. What phone over internet is a little bit complex. We're not going to get too deep into it this time, but basically it's just using an app to make a phone call over the internet versus over the phone line. With their meeting plan, this sort of focuses on their online meetings and using the parts we're after. But then they also have a call plan available, which basically just gives you access to an online phone. So if you didn't want to pay for like Verizon or pay for Spectrum maybe for landlines for your office, you might be able to use their call plan instead. It might be a good option for you. The meeting plan gives you access to 24-hour meeting lengths, up to your participant number to 200. It has 10 gigs of cloud storage included for recording your chats, which is pretty useful. And it also gives you free calling to literally anyone using Webex and encrypted cloud recordings. The call plan is a little bit different. It increases your meeting lengths up to 50 minutes. So just phone calls will last 50 minutes. You have participants up to 100 as well, but it cuts out those recordings in the cloud storage. But you can call anyone without Webex for free. So that's a distinction. It just focuses on calling people more than it does the online meetings. Or you can get both combined. This goes from the $15 just for the meet plan and the $17 for the call plan to just a flat $25 a month for both plans combined. You get all the best parts of both plans, so you can call anyone with or without Webex. You gain access to the encrypted cloud recordings. You get that 10 gigabytes of storage as well as the participant ups from the meet plan, but you're able to call pretty much anyone free of charge. So that's pretty useful. The Webex Scheduler actually looks a little something like this on desktop. It's a little different using the web app, but it's still a pretty straightforward system to use. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the pen. As you can see, it shows all of your upcoming meetings sort of listed down through here. I recorded this little snippet somewhat recently, but this sort of shows you all of the meetings that you're hooked up to. This also connects through to Outlook. So if you have Outlook meetings scheduled, it shows those as well. This meeting, the second one down for a commission run day on the 23rd, that was one that was just on my Outlook calendar. So that can be pretty useful. Additionally, you can just start instant meetings right up here. That will create a meeting at the link listed right here. You can alternatively just copy it and share it if you want to just have someone be able to directly click into your meeting. Or if you just want to set up a meeting, you hit schedule there. And once you schedule your meeting, it's pretty straightforward. It just asks you things like, when would you like this going? How long will the meeting be? Would you like to invite anyone? And then it'll send out a generic invite for that meeting that they can then accept. Here we go. Once you do get ready to launch the meeting, Webex actually does something a little nice, which shows you a personal room first. What that means is it sort of gets you all set up. It lets you test your microphone, it lets you test your camera, and it lets you make sure that everything's working before you join the presentation. You can mute using the mute button, stop video using the stop video button, and even start the meeting just by hitting the start button. These buttons are all located at the very bottom of that test window. You can also access digital backgrounds if your computer has enough processing power by clicking the change background option up in the corner. And you can even connect to a video system or stream your meeting to any sort of Bluetooth enabled device by hitting the connect to video system option. And then you can also get into more advanced settings with your microphones and speakers using that gear option there. You can also select if you're using computer audio or dialing in from that little drop down there that I just circled as well. Once you get everything set up, you want to actually get into the meeting. And this one is a little bit more complex than some of the other online meeting options. So it has a lot of things that you probably won't need to use. But real quick, we're going to walk through some of the basics. First, it keeps these video and muting options down here at the bottom. Most online web sharing services do something like this. So it's just an easy thing to think, okay, let's look at the bottom bar first. If you're having issues with like your audio or your video, that's where I'd start. It gives you a drop down on each of these buttons for video and audio as well. So you can set up your options in a little more advanced way if you need to. It gives you access to this screen share as well from the middle. And it also lets you record your meetings down here as well. It also gives you access to these sort of emoji responses for their text chat, which you can open down here in this bottom bar. Currently, I have participants selected, and that just shows you all of the members of the meeting. But you can also use things like this drop down here to create separate breakout rooms for people. Like you can set up a bunch of different sessions all at once. So let's say you have an online meeting with like 3 or 4 different teams, and you have a question you want them to discuss amongst themselves. You can then create a separate room, drag them into it, and then let them sort it out themselves. Once time's up, you can pull out all of the breakout sessions and just go back to one big meeting. You can get into those options as well by clicking on this breakout sessions menu option up here. In addition, a lot of the sort of higher end functions of Cisco WebEx are all under here as well. Each of them are pretty well organized, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, but essentially, if you're having trouble doing something specific with a participant or with the meeting, that's what these sections are for. You can also change the theme of WebEx meetings and change how it looks on your end into a dark mode, which looks a little bit like this. You can gain access to the chat option by clicking on that little chat icon in the corner there. We're going to highlight it as well. And this is what this sidebar menu looks like in chat mode. It has the participants listed up here still, but it also has this text chat option down in here. And you can just use that like a standard old text messaging chat. You can also share things not only by using that bottom option, but that share icon up here. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at by showing you that. It has the ability to share content, so your screens. You can link multimedia, so you can attach files. And you can even share the window itself so other people can see what you see running the meeting, which is pretty useful. So that said, there is one other option that I'd like to pitch, which is GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting is the most expensive option here. It's $14 a month at the professional level, which is what you would need to actually get if you're working with HIPAA-related content. So private health information, you at least need the professional level. It has 150 participants per meeting, but you get the full suite of the GoToMeeting, suite, which is pretty good. They've been in it longer than any of the other options that I pitched as well. GoToMeeting is kind of the old salts at this, so they are pretty good at what they do, and they pioneered a lot of the things that other things have seen, like the screen sharing and a bunch of other stuff like that. Their other option is the business option, which is what I think is probably the best value. It's $19 a month, but that limit on meetings is raised from 150 participants to 250. You get access to those recordings, transcriptions of meetings, like it'll record what the presenter is saying, and then it'll actually have a full transcript ready for you to view in PDF. It also will convert slides in meetings to PDFs as well if you want to share them that way. And it also includes a smart assistant. So it will recognize like action items, which is kind of neat. It'll also take notes in the app or let you take notes, includes drawing tools, which is what I've been using to highlight the screen with that red ink. And it also lets you turn the control of the meeting over to other presenters, which is really useful. It also advertises actually as being HIPAA compliant. So that's another safe peace of mind thing for producers. And this is kind of what it looks like when you start a GoTo webinar or GoToMeeting kind of interaction. It shows your webcam if you've got one hooked up in that upper corner, or just sort of the view of who's in the chat right here in the middle. It has microphone, camera, and screen sharing options down below. And it also has people who are attending the meeting, the chat, and advanced options up here. They've really simplified the menu design on the GoToMeeting app, which makes it a little easier for everyone to use as well. Also, you gain access to this record function right here if you have the level that we just talked about. So it's pretty straightforward and easy to figure out, at least if you're used to online meetings. Additionally, this is sort of what the options area has here on GoToMeeting. It lets you kind of choose which webcam you're using, shows you what sort of microphone is going on, so like which microphone you're using to talk through the meeting. As well as which speaker it's using, if it's coming out of a speaker attached to the computer, or if it's using a headset or something similar. Additionally, it does show you, as I mentioned before, all the people who are a part of the meeting up in that person section that's highlighted right up here. Additionally, you can share this meeting link directly with people if you want to invite someone last minute. Just hit the copy meeting link and or invite. So that being said, which one of these options would you think that you would like? There's Zoom, which is cheap, easy to use, but it's the least secure of them. There's Webex, which is a little more advanced. It's a mid-cost option, and it can also lump with a phone over internet plan, so you might be able to save some money there. Or would you rather do GoToMeeting, which is longer running, has fewer user issues, but is a little more expensive? You would be fine choosing all three of those, but there are a lot of competitors in this space. Some other options that I'd recommend if you don't use either of those are Microsoft Teams, which is really nice because it's designed to integrate with a lot of apps. If you use Windows, it's very, very easy to use and it's optimized for your computer. And it's relatively popular. So a lot of people have it, even if they don't normally do video meetings. So it might be better with clients if you had a Microsoft Teams plan. We also use Ringcentral here. It uses Zoom for conference calls and for scheduling online meetings, but it also provides phone over internet service, kind of like Webex, but incorporated into a third-party software. It also has a lot of great app integration if you're a developer. So if you do a lot of messing around with computers, it might be a good option. And the last one I wanted to mention is Jitsi. It is open source video conferencing, and it all operates in your browser. So no one needs to download anything. No one needs to really get fancy with it. And all you got to do to set up a meeting is share a direct link to the meeting, and you just send it the moment it's ready. So it's very good for impromptu meetings with clients. But let me go ahead and send you links to all of these options as well. Here, I'm gonna copy some links and put them up in the text chat there for everyone. These are links to the webinar replay library, the Refer an Agent program that I was talking about at the start of this presentation, as well as a link to learn about Microsoft Teams, Ringcentral, and or Jitsi as well. So all of those are in the chat there for you to copy and paste as well if you would like to review any of those services. At this point, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please feel free to enter them into the questions box. My direct line is 513-487-5390, and my email is tlevine@crnstone.com. I'll be around for a few moments longer to answer any questions, but that sort of generally covers online meetings, the etiquette that you might want to have for them, as well as how to use some of the more prevalent chat services. So thank you very much for attending, and I hope you had a great Tech Tuesday. Thank you.